What is going on? I want to thank you for coming by to Vape with the Viking. So today we got some RDA action. We have the Barrage, which is a new RDA from Vaping with Thesis himself, and his Modus. Sitting on top of the Carbon, the topside Carbon Dual from Dovpo and the Vapor Chronicles, and running some Darkstar Black Forest in there. Now, we're going to get into this single coil RDA. And before we even get into that, and before we even get into Viking's Advocacy Minute, we're going to go ahead and squash some stuff right out the bat. I know that there's going to be a lot of people that say, hey, it looks like the 502. When you get into the build deck, it's very reminiscent of the Point Blank by Modus. This was built by Thesis. This is going to be a single coil, non-airflow adjustable RDA. This was made with him or by him for a year. And it vapes, the final production vapes exactly the way he wants it to. So this is going to be a very, very subjective RDA. It'll probably fit a lot of people, but ultimately we do have to remember it was made for the way that he vapes. So if there are some aesthetic things that look similar, oh well, he just liked that, or it served a purpose that he wanted it to do. But we're going to get rid of all that. We're going to look at this, not think about other things. And so we're going to review this, the Barrage. But before we do that, you know what we're going to do. It's Viking's Advocacy Minute. So some things have been going down with, vaping in general. We know this, Grim, Nick Grim Green. He's been advocating forever. He's head into it. And then, of course, Matt from Suck My Mod. They're in the States. Those are two biggest guys for correct, accurate information, and they're on Twitter all the time. The newest thing that has happened is, with our current chief of staff, commander chief, or whatever he's called it. I just don't want to be negative. He tends to really hyper focus on something, and then things kind of get rolling, things kind of hem-haws, stuff happens, positive, negative, and then eventually he just kind of drops it. That's kind of what's going on right now. He's just pretty much was like, okay, fine, sorry, my bad. But here's what we need to do. Just because he has dropped the issue doesn't mean that Congress, legislation, other entities in the federal government is just going to let it go like he did. No, he started a fire, and we got to make sure the people that are still tending to that fire get squashed out. So we are not done by any means. I have seen some tweets and some messages and stuff saying, hey, Trump gave up. We're good. No, we're not. So please keep pouring water onto that fire, and eventually we'll get out of it. But that's enough of that for this review. I'm ready. Are you ready? Yeah, we're ready. Let's drop the hammer on the Barrage.
All right, so what I got for you today is the Barrage. And this is actually a collab with Modus and Thesis himself. So, of course, Thesis as a reviewer here. And you have Modus on this side, Thesis himself, and then his hashtag. And then you do have your scratch authenticity. And on the back side, you do have your contents. Warning, designed by Vaping with Thesis and manufactured by Modus. And then you have your color configuration here, but also when you get it, there is a little dot where this one shows that it is black, and really interesting box here, which is really just interesting. So on the contents here, you will have your instruction manual. One of the big important things, I believe it tells you in here, is 3 to 3.5 is where you want your inner diameter on your coil. And it does not really, I guess it shows it more than says it, but this deck design is going to have something different about what you want to do with the coils. On the inside, you also have 2 Allen keys, the RDA itself, and your accessory pouch that will have O-rings, your squonk pin, deck screws, and a couple of the Oni coils, triple fused, 26, 38, little coils there, which we will be using. Okay, so now we have just the RDA, so we'll go over that. And on the top, of course, you'll have your 810 drip tip, and then it is the O-ringless or goon style 810. So pretty much just about every even custom drip tip you have will fit in there. You do see Asmodus's signature green O-ring in there. And then on the outside, you'll have just very plain, very clean looking RDA here. And you'll notice it has not only stealthy in appearance on no gravings or anything like that, but you also don't see the airflow either. So it's kind of a neat little feature, makes it a little more stealthy, but as you'll be able to see, it's going to be a little hard on the black, but right there, under that third rib, you'll see there is a little kind of cutout almost. And that is going to be your airflow, one on each side. And yeah, it's a little hard to see on the, especially the black. I think even the other colors, it's still not the easiest thing to see, but very nice and concealed on there. And then on the bottom, I did already switch it out to the squonk pin. It does come with the standard pin in there, but we are going to squonk this guy. So on the bottom of it, you're going to have Barrage, your serial number, Asmodus, and designed by Thesis himself. So there we go. Let's pop it on a stand here, and then look on the inside here. Now on the inside, you're going to see even way more interesting stuff. So what you'll see is definitely you got some doming going on there. And not only doming on where the mouthpiece is, but overall the entire shape has got a really nice dome to it. And then you'll see those two kind of let's call them ovals, maybe. Now that is where your airflow is actually from the outside here. That's where it's going to be coming through. It's kind of like almost like intake or chimney style. Almost tubes, kind of. But the thing is, with that being like that, one, it's going to be very leak resistant anyway, because you're going to have to come up that and then out the side to get it to leak. But also too, if you look, it left a lot of metal up there as well, and that actually makes this pretty hefty for just that 24 millimeter top cap. But with all that metal in here, it's also why it's a really good idea they put these old school heat sink fins, because sometimes how hot you're running it, the metal will actually collect and keep a hold of that heat. So not only was this more for like an aesthetic thing, but also nice to hide the airflow. With as much metal as left is in there, that's probably another reason they did it, to make sure that it didn't just keep building heat on itself. And on the base deck, you do have just some Allens here. And they went with just a traditional single coil, but instead of just being the normal just screw down clamps, they did also put in that little ramp or divot to keep your legs in there while you're trying to secure them down. So that's really nice. Double O-ring design, of course, again, Asmodus green. And then you will have your peak insulator to denote your positive side and negative side. And then down in here, you'll have the way it squonks. It's just got kind of like a little button there. And then juice will literally just flow out of the sides here. And since it's a little raised, it will leave some juice collected at the bottom, which of course is perfectly fine by me. Not a big deal there. And then also you'll see, I'm going to kind of use these to point this out a little bit better. You'll see these weird kind of ramps or cutouts. And if you're like, well, what is that? That is actually the kind of neat thing with that airflow. Those little chimneys or stacks or inlets actually take and hit right here. So what Thesis has done is made it so that the airflow, when you pull, is going to come in the fins, down those chimneys, get directed on this little ramp here, and then your coil is going to be sitting right there. So, of course, it's going to pull it up into the coil. So you're going to kind of get basically under coil airflow flavor, but still being a top airflow leak resistant RDA. So really kind of neat there. And then you're going to have your, what you'd call your coil rod rest or spot or guide, however you want to call that. Now, one thing you do want to make sure is, because the legs are, since they're in one particular way, depending on how your coil is wrapped, either clockwise or counterclockwise, it will change how you lay your coil in. But that's, with some of these single coils, that can be quite a pain in the butt, because then you have to pull your coil up or push it down or so on and so forth. It will not matter with this guy whatsoever. This one, the way the airflow is designed, you want to take, and it even kind of showed you in the manual, you want to have your coil up anyway. So now with the 3mm, it's probably going to be quite a ways off of where that little rest or guide is, because you want pretty much the top of the coil even with the top of these posts. Now when you do a 3.5, it'll probably actually be closer, but this is more of just a guide on straight alignment, not so much to put your coil rod in there and push your coil down in there. So, all right, so we will get this rolling. Like I said, I will be using one of the Oni coils that came with it. I do like to use what I have on hand, just so as you had it on hand. And then we'll of course use some Sad Boys, some butter cookie, and then some holy fiber. So, all right, let's get this rolling.
All right, we are back up with the Barrage. So, a couple little things out of the way. It is a 24mm RDA. They consider it what they say, 2 post holes. I kept reading 2 post decks, and I'm like, what? But little 2 post holes. As you saw in a dive down, very, hate to say it, but very reminiscent, even though I said we're going to squash that, but kind of reminiscent of the point blank, where, the coil's right in the center. You got the way the posts are lined up and they catch onto the coil legs. And then, of course, you can adjust it up and down. So kind of reminiscent of that. The airflow, definitely completely different with those 2 like slopes, essentially. And then, of course, where the airflow on the actual exterior is down on the fins itself. So altogether, pros and cons. Pros, it does deliver really good flavor. But you also got to make sure you put the coil in the right spot. Usually when you have that coil rod guide on a build deck, that's where you want to kind of not only put your coil, but you want to, put your rod there, and that'll bring that coil pretty low. I know I wasn't supposed to do that. It even says in the manual not to do that. I tried it just to see what would happen. And yeah, it produced a lot of clouds and okay flavor. So with that, definitely like the manual says, and I know other reviewers have said, and even Thesis himself has said, actually to us, because he was on the TRV live show on Friday. And he just says bring that coil up a bit. So the way that I have it, and I have experimented with several different coils, several different builds, diameters, all that. The way that I have it is literally the cotton. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but literally the coil is just barely over the flat spot, and I'm talking just barely. It's almost dead even, but if you actually took something straight across, it would run into the little top portion of the coil. So, and what I have in here now, I did do a 3.5 millimeter coil, went down to 2.5, all that kind of stuff. It just kind of changed the way the restrictiveness was to it. 3.5 for me actually was a better restrictive hit, but it also kind of still muted the flavor. So I went back to a 3, but I did put a frame staple in it instead of the fused Claptons. I tried actually a quad core NI90 fused, and it did okay. It just I ended up ultimately going to a framed staple, and as you can see, not anything huge, not anything big. Well, except for my contrast is way off for some odd reason. Gotta love the updates, but nothing huge in there. And all I did was just follow the two guides to make sure that's where the coil was in relative position, not up and down, but parallel, I guess is how you want to run that. But also, as you can see, except for I got some kind of dirty cotton up in there, if you can see, it is those two cutouts for the airflow, the ones over here and the ones across. They are completely clear of the cotton's way, so that way it works beautifully. So for me, pro flavor, possible con on the flavor aspect is you do have to kind of not really get it just right, but you definitely have to make sure you listen to everybody's advice and put that coil pretty much dead smack dab to the top of those posts. So as far as leaking, it's just as leak resistant as of course, like the point blank, and that's just because of where the airflow has to come up and through. So to get juice out of there, which you can, you would have to go all the way up the barrel and then get into those air inlets, which is pretty darn hard. So I wouldn't say it's leak proof. I would say it's very, very leak resistant. Um, and a good pro for me is I used it on a mech without squonking. It worked really well. I preferred in squonk mode just because the fact that I didn't want to, when I had it on a mech, I was filling up pretty good amount with juice in there, so I don't have to keep filling it up. But that will also lead to some of the hot liquid coming up back at you. So for mech users, if you're not a heavy over dripper, still going to be good. So definitely pro there. For squonkers, you're going to absolutely love it. You can't flood it. You can't make it leak, I should say. It works really well. And right now, 40 watts. It's a 0.34 build. So I'll kind of show you some vapor production. Now, it is definitely good for a low wattage vapor. And I know that with single coils, a lot of people like lower wattages. They want to hear the crackle. They want to, get an excess of the vapor in. But you can also crank this bad boy up for more of the power hungry vapor. So here's a 60 watt vape. And the nice thing is, since it is a single coil, it does have a pretty decent juice well. It's like 5.5 millimeters. A good hearty squonk on it is going to make sure even at high wattages, you can chain vape it without getting a dry hit. So negatives or cons, some people are not going to like that you cannot adjust the airflow. Again, you can adjust the airflow, but you have to change your build. That's what's going to change the airflow on this guy. But that could be a very big con to some of you out there that you don't have a twistable AFC. I really can't. I don't have a lot of cons for that. The airflow adjustment is going to probably be one for most people. I do not mind it because I can put different builds in it. Squonk resistant or leak resistance. Yeah, man, I really don't have a lot. Thesis did a really good job with this, especially when it comes to a single coil and the versatility of the wattage because of your build you can do with it. So yeah, basically everywhere I can find it, anywhere from $35, $40, which is pretty standard for a newer RDA. Hey, saying I don't got a lot to it. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. A good amount of pros, and really only a couple little tiny cons, and well, little tiny cons. But if you want that adjustable AFC, that's going to be a huge con for you. But I would definitely say if you don't have a lot of single coils, or if you're a single coil type of vapor and you want something a little more versatile, a little bigger, a little leak resistant, definitely go pick this up out of the couple Asmodus products or RDAs that I have tried. Specifically, I'll have to say this is one of the best ones, or it is the best one in my opinion, as far as that company. So, but that is all I have today for the Barrage RDA by Vaping with Thesis, or Thesis himself, for I like to call him Mr. Man Pretty. And Asmodus. So once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming by to Vape with a Viking. And I'll check you later.